Joining us now live from the United Kingdom today in London is Vanessa Nueman. She's the president of Asymmetricus. She's a dual Venezuela U.S. citizen, and she has been involved in the Venezuelan crisis firsthand, been there many times from Caracas. Obviously, that's where she's from, and she's been involved in this from day one. These are all new developments, and she's in London today and joining us now. Vanessa, thank you for being with us on such short notice.
No problems. Thank you very much for having me on. I want to correct you on one small point. The reason why I'm in London is because I have actually wrapped up my business, left it, and President Juan Guaido, who is the legitimate interim president, has appointed me to be his ambassador to the United Kingdom. So I'm actually here in London on a diplomatic mission to work with the UK government on the transition to democracy that we need our help. So, and to get Venezuela back to democracy and prosperity. So I'm up to my eyeballs in this.
So, Vanessa, you are the official Venezuelan from the Guaido government, right? Or the Guaido
That's
faction?
Correct. I'm the official representative of Venezuelan President Juan Guaido to the United Kingdom.
So you're the ambassador to the United Kingdom.
That's right. That's right. I will be I'm the official representative is how I have been received by the ministers of the UK government with whom I am working on the transition. I will be the ambassador and get all the buildings once the drug cartel vacates the buildings. What has happened is the way Maduro refuses to leave Caracas, despite the fact that he's a squatter, his criminal network of ambassadors also refuse to leave the various buildings in various countries. So it's a slow process of transition. The same way the transition is playing out gradually inside Caracas, it is also playing out gradually in throughout the world with all the embassies.
All right, so we could refer to you as the
official
representative of the Juan Guaido government of Venezuela to the United Kingdom, and but you can't take the residence or anything until the drug card. Basically, what has happened and what you've outlined here is the Maduro regime has turned his ambassadors into drug traders, basically.
Correct. Some of the embassies are actually used. In fact, the woman who's occupying the embassy building here in London has an arrest warrant out for her for stealing $4 million out of a money laundering account of drug money in Andorra. So she's being prosecuted in Spain. And yet she clings to the buildings. And our concern is we are working with the UK government because the British are still in their embassy in Caracas. So we need to be mindful that we want them to stay in Caracas. They've been great partners of ours, of the Juan Guaido government, and we want them to stay there. So if we ask the Brits to throw out the Venezuelan drug cartel people from the buildings in London forcibly, we fear that their British embassy in Caracas would be attacked. So we have to work this delicately, in partnership, and gradually. And then once Guaido kicks out Maduro, once Maduro goes, his ambassadors will necessarily have to also vacate the buildings from around the world. So,
right.
We are watching this closely. We are deeply involved, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful to see that finally some aspect of the military is coming to back the Constitution, as we have long sought for them to do.
So basically, you're in a waiting game right now because you're the official representative, and until there's an actual government regime change, administration change in Venezuela, you're kind of waiting in the wings, but you're the official representative. So
that's right. You got it exactly right.
So comment on and thank you for that, Vanessa Nueman. Comment on the comments yesterday, which were pretty stunning, by Secretary of State Pompeo, who said Maduro was ready to board an airplane to Havana, and the Russians discouraged him from doing that. What is your take on that?
Well, it's the same thing they did with Assad in Syria. So a lot of the Syria patterns are also playing out in Venezuela. A lot of the same players. Iran, Russia, Russian influence. You also have some Russian intelligence operatives in Venezuela. They're functioning as a combination of sort of what they call the little green men, which is sort of mercenary soldiers. They say they're not Russian military, but they're kind of private contractors of Russian military on the border with Colombia. And they're also providing cyber and internet control. So in support of Maduro. So the internet is down for a lot of Venezuela, except it mysteriously comes back up just before Maduro speaks. So it's one form of information control. The Russians want to keep Maduro there because he's one of their main money laundering assets. They have 17 billion invested that they have given to Maduro. They have an oil refinery. They're trying to get their hands on the gas, on the natural gas as well. And more importantly, it's a way for them to stick it to the United States. In other words, they feel that the United States has been patrolling the Black Sea and their actions against the Russian regime with the Magnitsky Act sanctions. They want to make Venezuela sort of a bargaining chip in that geopolitical game. The problem is, these are my compatriots. We are dying. We're dying from hunger. We're dying from a lack of medicine. And the Russians just absolutely don't care. We are just a pawn in their game. So it is time for our military to stand up and defend our Constitution and defend our people and put Maduro on a plane out. There have been various attempts to get Maduro on a plane out. And we hope that eventually he will take it, because the options will just get worse and worse.
We're with Vanessa Nueman. She's live in London. She is the official representative of the Juan Guaido government of Venezuela in London today, waiting to be ambassador after they officially take control of the country. She'll be the ambassador to the United Kingdom. Vanessa, what you outlined, obviously the Venezuelan people caught in this basically geopolitical game, as you said, between various factions. But let me ask you this. Why does the military, why are they still supporting Maduro? And when do you see that breaking?
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing, is they're not supporting Maduro. They're not supporting Maduro at all. What has happened is that they are they're not supporting Maduro at all, but they are a high military command, like the Minister of Defense, and others are up to their eyeballs in drug trafficking, trafficking of gold, gasoline, and even food. So the starvation is actually one of the ways they fund themselves, right, because the importation of food. So they're making $8.8 billion a year. Mm-hmm. So they think they don't want to see that go. Right. President Guaido has offered them amnesty, but frankly, what they want is not just amnesty, but they want the amnesty and keep the $8.8 billion a year, which is unrealistic and unacceptable. And second of all, they operate in a state of terror. Mm-hmm. So the middle rank, a lot of them are supporting Guaido, and you notice that they are not shooting the people. They are not shooting the protesters. They're letting them go by. Guaido is marching through the streets of Caracas, heading west through the slums toward the presidential palace, and the military is not standing in his way. So they are letting him pass. But what has happened is they haven't flipped until they get Maduro on a plane. Now, that is sort of, dictatorship, end of dictatorship 101, is you don't declare yourself until you have the negotiated exit behind closed doors of the guy to leave the country. So that's what we're waiting for, and we hope that today or tomorrow Maduro will take the offer and get on a plane.
So you think it's maybe hours or days before this is over in Venezuela?
Well, I I certainly hope so. We have a very decent chance. As I said, today it wasn't even supposed to start until today. So today is really sort of day 2, and is the day where everybody has been called out to the streets. They are heartened by the fact that, frankly, the only violence we have seen has been perpetrated not even so much by the regime, but by armed gangs operating for the regime, with the notable exception of like one armored truck that ran over some protesters. But we've seen other armored trucks go and retreat. So we have a sense that the regime is fragile, that we can push it all the way to the end, but it's basically a numbers game. If you can get enough people down from the hills, down from the slums. President Guaido comes himself from a very bad slum called Katia, which is on the outskirts of Caracas. It's actually between Caracas, is where the airport is, basically. And so if we can get the numbers so that the military won't shoot at them and take it to the presidential palace and get him out, it's possible. We have always saw a peaceful transition. And I want to be very, very clear. What is happening here in Venezuela, this is a democratic uprising that is foreseen in the Constitution. All of this is according to the Constitution that, ironically, Hugo Chavez drafted. So this is we are defending the Constitution that was actually drafted by the regime. It's a form of civil disobedience to restore the rule of law and democracy. So we keep calling on the military that to observe the Constitution is to be a patriot, and we hope that they will heed that call. We have accepted the fact that this is a process. We are fighting for our freedom. We are fighting for our lives, and we will continue the fight until the end.
We're with Vanessa Nueman. She is live in London. She is Juan Guaido's official representative of his government to the United Kingdom. Once Juan Guaido takes power as president, then Vanessa Nueman will be confirmed as the official ambassador from Venezuela to the United Kingdom, and they will take over the offices there. Right now, they're still being housed by the Maduro regime, and those in his ambassador corps basically are part of the drug cartel. That's one of the issues there. Vanessa, I've only got a couple more minutes, and I know you've got to get to some meetings, but let me just ask you this. You're mentioning that Juan Guaido and his supporters are marching towards Caracas. What happens, and they're not being met with opposition by the military, they're not being stopped, which means that there's a softening there. What happens when they get to the palace? The presidential palace, what happens?
Well, we hope that they will just, that at that point, Maduro will be ushered out on an airplane, and that the military will welcome him into the presidential palace, and they will stand beside him and acknowledge him as their legitimate commander-in-chief, interim president. So that is what we hope for. And that is what happened in 1958. So this isn't just, a hope springing out of nowhere. This is actually historical precedent in Venezuela. We did something similar in 1958 when we had a different military junta.
Right.
That was a peaceful transition. That's what we have always called for. We have not asked for foreign, military support. Although, let me be clear, President Guaido could.
Right.
He could. There is a clause where he can ask for support especially if the Venezuelan people are harmed.
So you're looking for a peaceful transition, no violence?
Yes. I mean, as little violence as possible. I mean, no violence would be preferable. But realistically, we have already seen some violence. We've already seen... but it's been very, very low levels of violence, so that's very encouraging.
All right, Vanessa, we're going to get you on again tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern Time, which would be what? That's 2 p.m., I guess. 2 p.m. London time. I'll see you again tomorrow, official representative of the UK in London for the Juan Guaido government. I really appreciate the time, Vanessa. And when you become the ambassador there, I'm going to be your first live interview. I'm going to fly out there, and we'll be able to spend some time and get your take on everything. Deal?
A deal, absolutely a deal, John. You've always been on side. You've been a great friend, and I really appreciate it.
All right, thank you. I'll see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern. John Fredericks Radio Network. That was Vanessa Nueman in London.